I owe Microsoft Game Pass an apology, and Ghost Recon Wildlands, but we'll get to that later. In fact, maybe apology is the wrong word. I've just always insisted that I'd never try Game Pass because I already own too many games I haven't played yet. So why would I pay for a subscription for even more games I don't own? Then a few months ago, something caught my eye on Deku Deals, which, side note, Deku Deals is great and you should use it. They noted that Walmart Plus members were being gifted a free 60-day trial of Game Pass. I didn't want the promotion to end before getting a chance to redeem the offer, so I went ahead and activated my trial. Then, I more or less forgot about it. I was still knee-deep editing my Rainbow Six video, so I wasn't really playing anything. When I had free time, I was using it to get the video out the door. I also had a 10-day long trip coming up, and my goal was to finish the video before I left. That said, it occurred to me that I was in between video games and would soon be in between videos. I could pause my plans for my next video and see how many games I could finish in a 60-day trial of Game Pass, and then I could turn it into the video you're now watching. It was tricky balancing gaming with finishing the video before my deadline, and of course, I didn't meet that timeline. But the result was a really fun little experiment, and it exposed me to a ton of great games. So, how many games did I beat? Were there any surprises? Did I dump any before I finished them? How disciplined was I in not 100%ing every game so I could maximize the total number of games in the trial? The answer to that last question is not very. Game 1, a short hike. I'm pretty sure the first time I heard about a short hike was by listening to the Besties, because one of them mentioned that he had just played it for something like the 7th time, and it remained delightful and charming as always. I looked it up, added it to my Deku Deals wishlist, and proceeded to see it featured or discussed in multiple podcasts and YouTube videos. I still didn't really have a sense of what it was about, or what the gameplay was like. All I knew is it had a sterling reputation and is super cute. I picked a short hike first for a few reasons. I knew it was short and I wouldn't have trouble squeezing it in before I left for our trip. I also knew it would be kid-friendly, and if I was going to maximize playtime over the next 51 days, I knew some of it might have to be with my 2-year-old present. After my time with this game, I was worried. This one would be hard to beat. I hope I didn't accidentally lead off with the best one. It is oozing charm out of every pore. The writing is effortlessly funny, and I laughed out loud more than once. You play as a bird named Claire, visiting an island where your aunt is a park ranger or something. Your goal is to take a short hike up to the island's mountaintop, because, obviously, you need cell signal to call your mom. What transpires is simply delightful. What you'll find if you attempt the hike straight off is that you need to collect enough golden feathers to summit the first big rock face on the trail. The more feathers you have, the longer you can climb. Claire scurries and glides around the island doing odd jobs, making friends, winning races, finding secrets, and picking up items to scrounge together enough feathers to make the climb, and doing cute little head tilts like this when you change direction. Just look at how freaking cute. The island seems big at first, but after an hour or two of exploring, you've probably gotten the lay of the land, unlocked a few shortcuts, and rounded out your feather collection enough to navigate the island and make the trek. I was a little disappointed when I started the game that it seemed not to do much to bring you up to speed on the controls. If you watch the screen, the instant the game handed control to me, I did what every gamer does. I looked left and said to myself, that's the main path, but first, treasure. And I turned right. Come to find out, the island is a big circle, and they want you to start circumnavigating to the left, which is where all the characters are waiting to teach you how to play. So, joke's on me, and I had to strike my complaint from the record. Bad Brent. Bad exploring instincts. Stop being so nosy all the time. I mentioned earlier that one goal when I kicked off this experiment was to see if I could overcome my tendency to be a completionist. I wanted to sample as many games as possible during my trial. When a game is, say, 3 hours to beat but 5 hours to complete everything, it doesn't sound like much. 5 hours is still pretty short, except if you stop after 3 hours and switch to another game, you could beat a whole game with the 2 hours you saved based on how short some of these games are. Besides, how compelling can a short hike possibly be, I asked before starting. Am I going to feel obligated to turn over every rock in a sleepy little indie title? Turns out, yes. I can't lie to you. I didn't 100% it, but I had such a good time enjoying the island. I spent hours exploring. I tried to get a ton of feathers, return the red bandana, and win a bunch of races. I had many a conversation, completed many a favor and side quest, all while enjoying the terrific dialogue, the lovely art, and exquisite soundtrack. A quick note about the art, or maybe more specifically the graphics. The game is intentionally rendered in a pixelated, chunky presentation. It suits the mood of the game well, but when I messed with the slider to make the graphics smoother, I realized, good grief, my eyes were strained and I didn't even know it. It's the same reaction I had one day when I blew up the text size on my Outlook at work. You don't realize your eyes are straining and your head hurts until you make it easier to read. Let this be a sign to any of you out there who haven't blown up the text size on your computers and phones yet. Your eyes will thank you. You don't need to be a hero. Make your system text larger. Anyway, while I was initially hesitant to reduce the chonk because I felt it went against the creator's vision, I eventually kept it smooth because it was easier on mine. And I noted the music a minute ago, so let me get back to that. The music in this game is so lovely. I absolutely fell in love with it. The first thing I did after my first play session was pull it up and add it to my Apple Music library. All 3 albums of it. It's the perfect thing to put on in the background when you need something pleasant and chill to vibe to. If you live in a place where the sun is shining and it's warm outside, turn it on, give it a listen. Lay in a hammock and read a book, grill up some burgers, camp out under an umbrella at the beach. Seriously, the music is stupendous. I adore it. It immediately entered my heavy rotation at home of chill background music for hanging out or playing with kids. Hats off to composer Mike Sparling. I've got other games to cover, but I'll leave a short hike off with this. Purely by chance, I wrapped up the game's story on Mother's Day, and I was not ready for that. Call your mom, folks. Game 2, Superliminal. Continuing the theme of trying to knock out short games before I left on vacation, game number 2 was Superliminal. A buddy of mine told me a few years ago that he really liked it and wanted me to play it. I had 3 days to beat it, and it was supposed to take 2 hours. Sounds good to me. Superliminal is a first-person puzzle game. The whole conceit is you use your perspective and visual tricks to solve puzzles and advance through levels. The whole thing is just unsettling. Everything is slightly off. The game gives you almost no context for what's going on at first, so you are just trundling through these levels and... What? What the heck is this? Almost immediately, you can tell something is amiss. The tone, the visual palette, and the music all collapse and get rebuilt over and over again as you weave in and out of the hotel and the behind-the-scenes areas. There's an AI narrator who's kind of channeling Gladys from Portal, but to mostly good effect. The writing is decently funny, not trying too hard.
Explicitly chosen to remind you that I am not a part of your patient care team. I do not care.
The loading screens are terrific, trippy, and unique. And you fall into a rhythm of waking up at 3 a.m. and tackling your next level, wondering what this game's deal is. The vibe is very eerie, but so far it's just a fun, brain-teasing puzzler, and... What? What the heck is this? Okay, at last, the game begins to reveal itself to you. The eerie vibe was deliberate. This is not a puzzle game. This is a horror game masquerading as a puzzle game. And... What? What the heck is this? I was sure this was turning into a horror game. Well, that's okay. It was nighttime, I was alone in the dark, I was probably just overreacting to it anyway. This isn't going to become scary, right? Everything's gonna be fine, right? I need to stop. I don't want to give too much away. Let me just say this. Between play sessions of Superliminal, I went on Backlogged to see what the community there thinks of it. I skimmed some reviews, and a common thread I saw was people mentioning how powerful and inspiring the ending was. The ending, I thought? To this trippy horror puzzle game? And then I texted my buddy when I was going through the last portion of the game, and he said, "Man, I wish I could be there for it when you see the ending." Talk about hyping it up. Everybody's on the same page when it comes to the ending. I was very alert to what was going to happen, trying to predict it, aware that it might lose its effect on me because everyone oversold it. I will just say this. The ending was inspiring. I did not see it coming, and they also saved some of their coolest, craziest, most creative ideas for the gameplay and optical illusions for the home stretch. Control quirks, perspective tricks, gravity inversions, wild stuff. It blew my mind over and over again. If what you've seen here or what I've described sounds at all appealing to you, do yourself a favor. Play Superliminal. Game 3. Crimson Skies, High Road to Revenge. I'm old enough to remember when Crimson Skies, High Road to Revenge came out on the original Xbox. My brother had a copy, but I didn't remember much about the game. Like many titles from that era, I wondered if it would hold up today since I didn't already have the nostalgia hooks in me. It was originally on my list of games I wanted to try on Game Pass, but it was lower down, low enough that I likely wouldn't have gotten to it before the trial ended. Then on a whim, I went on Metacritic to get a sense of how well the game was reviewed at the time. Again, not a perfect litmus test for today's gaming sensibilities, but a good place to start. Y'all, have you seen this Metacritic page? People were effusive in their praise for this game. Right then and there, my excitement/interest in the game went from like a 5 to a 9. And after playing a cozy game and a puzzle game, an air combat game seemed like a good change of pace. Booting up the game and being treated to the classic Xbox start screen was an absolute throwback. But then we start off with a cutscene to set the stage and a tutorial mission to learn the controls. So far, I'm digging the vibes. The Crimson Skies franchise was doing diesel punk before that term was even coined. Toss in some enjoyable characters, an Indiana Jones attitude of swashbuckling adventure, shockingly great music, and you got a stew going. The music reminds me a lot of John Williams' work on the Star Wars and Indiana Jones movies, which is exactly the tone they were aiming for. Since the first thing you do is learn the controls, I want to briefly address them. The main criticism I saw levied against Crimson Skies before I played it was that it has a questionable control scheme. I don't know what it is about flight combat games, but sometimes developers feel comfortable straying from the exact control scheme perfected by the Ace Combat series. Do not do this. You do not need to reinvent the wheel. Just copy their work. It's okay. Every first-person shooter copied Halo's work too. We don't judge them for it. Are the controls unbearable? No, they're not. The trouble is, they mapped the control of the aircraft to the left thumbstick, which is good, but they made it so the aircraft turns left or right instead of rolling with side input. Having this available as a control scheme is fine for people who want to use it. Ace Combat pitches it as the novice control scheme, but making everyone use it is a missed opportunity. So Crimson Skies ends up controlling like the Rogue Squadron games, where you can roll the aircraft, but only by holding down another button first. The right thumbstick is useful for tapping into special aerial maneuvers, and there are quite a few available with different input combinations of the two thumbsticks. Having so many to call upon is pretty cool, but I didn't play it enough to memorize which inputs corresponded with which maneuvers, and I forgot to use them half the time anyway. Okay, with the controls out of the way, I want to talk about the game, because it's a freaking blast. It feels like an absolute throwback to a bygone era of video games, where there's swashbuckling adventure, sky pirates, a playboy white male lead, and every problem can be solved with gunfire. Honestly, bring it back. You start out in a bit of a hub world, and the game presents you with the freedom to fly around and take on missions, earn money, repair your plane, and snoop around for secrets. Between the art design and the music, I immediately felt like I was transported to this world. Something about the original Xbox aesthetic of the visuals made me feel nostalgia for the game I don't actually remember playing. I think because it reminded me of Halo. I was kind of impressed by this approach to a tiny sandbox environment in a flying game, because every other flight combat game I've ever played was level-based. Being able to swing by a mission and trigger it or land your plane for repairs reminded me of when you could swing by a landing pad or a docking station in Rogue Squadron to assume control of different aircraft. In any case, the nuts and bolts of the gameplay were incredibly fun. The machine guns feel and sound great. The rumble feedback from the guns is the platonic ideal of why controller rumble is such a clutch feature. Watching enemy planes detonate multiple times before exploding and falling out of the sky is endlessly gratifying. Each plane has a unique special weapon besides the guns, but all I really wanted to do was use the guns because they feel so good. I've criticized Ace Combat before for not always conveying the intensity and dynamism of air combat maneuvers, and one reason for that is the aircraft always stays straight and level on the screen and the world rotates around you. Crimson Skies, instead, leaves the world oriented normally but moves your aircraft around in all sorts of crazy ways, and the end result is your actions convey a certain wow factor that's absent from the more staid motion of Ace Combat's main titles. I do wonder if their decision to make your plane turn instead of roll was in service of this overall concept. It didn't have to be this way, but I could see the devs wanting to keep the game easier and more accessible to the average player. I will actually be covering this even more in my next video, so stay tuned for that one. The game has an engaging push and pull going on. When you shoot down enemy planes, sometimes they will drop pickups with health, ammo, or money. They fall out of the planes and slowly parachute to the ground, leaving you a limited window to zoom over and snatch them up. But even in the short time I spent playing it, I could already feel the combat encounters stretching me. Do you shake off the enemies on your tail and try to take them down? Or do you disengage from the fighting to grab some falling pickups with enemies in hot pursuit? Do you camp out in a turret and snipe enemies from relative safety? Or do you risk your plane to grab money and tokens from guys you shot down? To answer that question, I'll have to get back to you. I liked Crimson Skies so much that I bought a used copy on eBay and carried on playing some more games that aren't as cheap to just buy outright. Next, I turned my sights to Hi-Fi Rush. I've been eager to play Hi-Fi Rush since it came out, and on Xbox it never goes on sale, I think because they know it's a big draw for Game Pass subscribers. Now that it's available on PlayStation, it actually goes on sale there. But it's a great candidate for a Game Pass game because it retails for $30 otherwise, so I figured the time was now. But when I went to play it, I found out I didn't install it to my Xbox. When I first loaded up my Game Pass trial, I went through and downloaded a bunch of games I wanted to try, and I swore I downloaded Hi-Fi Rush. But I sat down on the couch one night to play it, and it was going to take a while to download, so I didn't want to wait. I looked through the games I did already have ready to go, and I picked one that was only supposed to be about 6 hours long. This next game wasn't the best game I played on my Game Pass trial, and it wasn't my favorite, but it's the one that's been bouncing around in my head ever since. Something about it affected me. Its cocktail of melancholy, bleakness, and foreboding yet also its hope and beauty. That game is Solar Ash. I'd been interested in playing Solar Ash ever since it was announced, because I loved Hyperlight Drifter, the first game from developer Heart Machine. When Solar Ash came out, the critical consensus seemed positive but not gushing. So instead of rushing to go play it, I figured I'd bide my time and get it for a good sale at some point. I don't know how I got this impression, but I thought it was a 2D side-scroller. It is not a 2D side-scroller. Compared to Hyperlight Drifter, this is a radical departure. 2D versus 3D, isometric Zelda-like versus third-person action-adventure, text-only versus voice-acted, subtextual narrative versus explicit.
Blood. It doesn't wash off.
In other ways, though, it's totally of a piece. Sprawling, desolate, colorful yet dark sci-fi worlds, disaster piece soundscape, bleak tone. In Solar Ash, you play as Ray, a so-called Void Runner dispatched with a small team into a black hole called the Ultra Void. You use technology that your civilization found but did not create called Void Tech. You tracking so far? To activate a big piece of Void Tech inside the black hole that you call the Star Seed. You hope that if you can activate the Star Seed, you will collapse the black hole and it will not devour your planet. Oh, sorry, forgot to mention that's your planet. So you do what any young girl would do in Ray's situation. You rollerblade to save the world. Ray has a number of combat and mobility abilities that you will exploit to find your scattered teammates, explore the ruins of devoured worlds, restore communications links, prepare the Starseed, and fight colossal monsters. Oh, sorry, forgot to mention there are colossal monsters. I chose the word Colossus carefully because the game is very obviously doing a fusion of two well-known games, Jet Set Radio and Shadow of the Colossus. The boss fights are decent. Someone complained about the game requiring so little of you that even the camera is always positioned where you need it to be. But I think it makes for some cool cinematic flair, and it cuts down on frustration of trial and error trying to figure out where to go after each phase of Titan Rodeo. However, there's still a good deal of trial and error. The boss fights are like giant QuickTime events. Sometimes I nailed a phase on the first try, other times it took me like 5 to 10. Sometimes I stopped trying a certain approach after it didn't work, tried a couple others, and then retried the original approach only to have it work. So it can be a little annoying that way. Traversal is well realized. I saw some folks complain about the movement physics, but I never had issues with them. It always seemed like Ray controlled fluidly and responsively, and you get some opportunities to chain together cool moves and build up momentum. It's generally fun and it gets funner as it goes. You know the sensation you get in your stomach when you're on a roller coaster or a flight and you catch a bit of a dip? Solar Ash somehow managed to create that stomach lurch sensation multiple times when falling from great heights. Really impressive. Hard to create in a video game. Don't know how they did it. While Disaster Piece wasn't the exclusive composer this time around, he is credited as the overall sound designer, and the sound design overall is pretty strong. In some ways, I actually prefer the music in Solar Ash to that of Hyperlight Drifter. While Hyperlight Drifter is moody and mellow, Solar Ash sprinkles in some grand, exciting tracks for when stuff really heats up, namely for the boss battles. I noticed the boss themes would fade out in volume and intensity if you strayed far from the boss, and as you close the distance, the music picks back up to the normal arrangement. Very cool idea. Solar Ash's game world consists of 6 areas, and after clearing the 3rd area, I was about to close the proverbial book in favor of checking out a different game. Sometimes I pause a game intending to come back later, but I seldom just abandon a game halfway, especially a game that's like 5.5 hours to beat the main story. But up to that point, I was somewhat underwhelmed. I was leaning 6 out of 10 for a rating. The game was mostly straightforward with few compelling gameplay developments, and the difficulty was borderline too easy. Ray's abilities, while cool, seemed to be stagnant. Put another way, I felt like I'd sort of grokked the game, seen what it had to offer, and wouldn't be missing out if I moved on. But I pushed through, thinking I'd be done soon enough, and although I suspected the gameplay had no more surprises in store, I was curious to see if the narrative would pay off. I'm glad I did. As you tilt into the second half of the game, the challenge rises. Not a crazy amount, but enough to keep me from getting complacent. Enemies in combat never get fleshed out too much, but they do ramp up the number, type, and placement of enemies to make you work for it. Traversal challenges get progressively more imaginative and more exciting as well, if not always more challenging. The fact combat and traversal stay largely consistent throughout isn't a bad thing. The game wants you to get something out of the experience, but a strenuous challenge isn't it. And that's good. Ray's abilities, combined with the level layouts and the enemy encounters, allow you to pull off some fun, quick bursts of each type of activity, chaining them together gracefully and artfully, and that becomes the fun. Well, it's always fun, but it opens up more as it goes, and the devs really start to flex in the back half of the game. Another complaint I saw a lot from users on Backlogged was the voice actor and the characterization of Ray. Personally, I really liked Ray. She's spunky and feisty, but also understandably a little anxious. It comes through in her performance.
I'm glad you didn't lose all your memories, Sid. I'm glad you remember me.
I love her little laugh after a great grind or a big trampoline. She seems like a teenage girl maybe, but she balances moments of neuroticism with compassion and tenderness.
No one should be forced to die before they're ready. Not even in the Eternal Garden. I'm sorry.
Around this point, I'm leaning 7 out of 10. The game hits its stride. I can see where it's going and that it had more up its sleeve than I thought. One really small thing I noticed as I wrapped up the caches before the endgame, when you scan the area, chances are you're heading for whatever the next closest thing is, right? There's a moment where the closest thing pops up before all the other items. Pretty clever.
Oh my god, who the hell cares?
But then I started collecting more Void Runner caches. And then I unlocked the suit that lets you track down the remaining caches, so I got all those. And then I looked up the last couple locations I needed to tie up the remaining side quests. And then I beat the game. By the time the credits rolled, I went from being interested to invested to engrossed in the story. For what it's worth, so did my wife, who watched me play a good deal of it and asked me to fill her in on the story developments when she missed some sessions. She came for the gorgeous art but stayed for the story. I was eager, we were eager, to see how it ended, and the resolution was shocking. It's neither the vanilla happy ending I was expecting, nor the despondent worst possible outcome I would have predicted otherwise. It strikes a weird, chilling middle ground all its own. For making me genuinely care about the story as well as surprise me with the resolution, this game gets a solid 8 out of 10. It's a game that pays off if you give it the time, and I did, 10 hours. Give it a chance to cook, and it does. It has a New Game Plus mode and a hardcore mode, which I think are two different modes, so there's some replay value there too. A cursory Google revealed a group of people who think that the hardcore mode is the only true way to play, not that I know what changes about it. Everything about this game coalesced into something special. Part joyride, part existential nightmare, Solar Ash left an impression. I'll be chewing on this one. Game 5, Unpacking. Oh well, that was a heavy one. Time for something a bit lighter. Enter Unpacking. This game made something of a splash when it came out a couple years ago. Every commentator I heard discuss it had nothing but good things to say about it, and people lamented how almost immediately cheap imitators of the game started popping up on digital storefronts, potentially stealing customers away from the original. But what the heck is it? It's just a game where you unpack boxes? I thought it would be cute and cozy and appealing to my wife, who normally doesn't like grim or violent video games. But when I pitched her on it and she saw me play it, she scoffed and left the room like, have fun with that. I did have fun with that. Yeah, so if you didn't pick up on it from the name and my pitch, Unpacking is a game where you move into a new place, unpack your stuff, and then move into a new place. That's it. That's the whole game. But there's more to it than that. As you progress, you're treated to this silent narrative of a girl's life, where she goes, what she keeps between moves, what she lets go of, what hobbies she picks up or drops, her love life, and what matters to her, including video games. Lots and lots of video games. At one point, you unpack a little model Eiffel Tower. Later on, you unpack a red double-decker bus and a Leaning Tower of Pisa, indicating the subsequent trips you've taken around Europe. It's little stuff that's so thoughtful. It's very sweet. Mellow music, great art. The sound effects are spot on. You can open drawers or cabinets while you're holding something, which is nice so you don't have to set it down first. You can stack bowls and plates, hang towels on hooks, and pop your toothbrush and toothpaste into a cup on your sink. This little dev team thought of everything. It's like they've lived in a house and put things in it before. The clock flashes 12 when you plug it in. Cabinets and doors won't close if things are actually in the way. Lifting objects that are stacked or inside of one another moves all of them, which is another nice touch. I also had to cock an eyebrow when I saw this game listed under something like a Pride or a Marginalized Voices category on Game Pass. A game about unpacking boxes, I said? Why? Well, if you play the game, you'll figure it out. Apparently the game is semi-autobiographical regarding the lead designer. Anyway, super cute game. It becomes a zen little experience, and at around 4 hours, it doesn't overstay its welcome. I did eventually start listening to podcasts while I played, which I almost never do, but it was a nice way to unwind after a long day. Worth playing, but maybe not worth $20 or whatever it retails at. Game 6. Ghost Recon Wildlands. I had one more game on my agenda to beat before my trial ran out, and it was not Ghost Recon Wildlands. But I decided I wanted to give the game another shake. If you've seen my video on Ghost Recon Future Soldier, you may recall that I opened the video by kind of slagging Wildlands. I was incredibly excited for Wildlands because it seemed like they were going to take the perfect foundation laid by Future Soldier and extrapolate it out into an open world game. But when I tried the demo of Wildlands, I found it borderline unplayable. It felt stilted and clunky and rough, from walking and running to aiming and zooming in to look down sights, and everything in between. I wrote it off as a failed effort, where it didn't matter how good the missions or environments were because the core gameplay felt so janky. I got enough comments over the years on that video telling me to give the game another shot, and I also recognized that the version I played was a pre-release demo that at this point is 7 years old. Could they have cleaned up the gameplay in that amount of time? Absolutely. So I figured it was worth dipping a toe back into while it was still free. I'm glad I did. The story of Wildlands has your 4-man squad dropped into Bolivia on a deniable operation to dismantle a Bolivian drug cartel. It's a pretty involved campaign with different regions of the enormous world map divided up by difficulty and cartel boss. You align with rebels who you help do stuff and they help you in turn, and you generally scour the map for weapons, upgrades, and intel. Complete enough missions and you'll zero in on that area's boss, kill them, and repeat as you climb your way up the cartel food chain. When this game launched, it was already being derided as tone-deaf, out of touch, jingoistic propaganda for American interventionism and world police, all that stuff. I couldn't care less about that. I think it's a goofy, naive line of attack. An extremely dangerous, cruel, violent drug cartel takes over a country, and America sends 4 people to help the local population take their country back from the clutches of fear and oppression. I guess I don't get the counter-argument. What, let the drug cartels continue to kill and poison people with impunity? This might sound familiar to you if you watch my Rainbow Six video, so I don't want to belabor the point. But this story is even more ripe for dumb political takes than Vegas. I mean, sure, you could debate the merits of invading Bolivia with an occupying force to stamp out the cartels, but 4 people? 4? If sending 4 people to go after a problem is too much, I don't know what to tell these people. And make no mistake, the game characterizes the cartel members as almost comically evil. I've only been introduced to a handful so far, but they're all utterly gross, despicable people with no redeeming qualities. If I didn't know what I know about real drug cartels and how they operate, I'd almost accuse the portrayal as unrealistically evil, laying it on too thick. But these cartels really do be like that. Anyway, upon booting up the game, these incessant Ubisoft Club rewards kept flashing on screen and would not stop. Please stop. Please, please, please stop. Not gonna lie, the opening title card works. I'm pretty picky about title cards. Credit where credit is due. This one's a winner. With the 5 minutes of notifications followed by the intro cutscene out of the way, I turned my attention to the gameplay. Wildlands still has a lot of problems. It's not perfect. Some have disparaged it as a reskinned Far Cry or Ubisoft. While these criticisms are pretty harsh, I can at least judge them on their merits now, because I'm happy to report that the core gameplay actually feels good enough for me to play the game. However, it seems like they take one step forward and one step backward in many ways. The aiming is actually not as bad as I remember it. It feels smooth and consistent with Future Soldier, which is high praise coming from me. You can still hold down the left trigger to aim over the shoulder and click the right stick to aim down sights. In Future Soldier, if you ever held down the left trigger, it would start with a third-person aim, and it would always require a right stick click to switch to the first-person aim. In Wildlands, the game remembers which one you used last, and it returns to that the next time you hold the left trigger down. So if you aim down your sight and then let go of the trigger, it would jump right back to the first-person aim the next time you held down the trigger. I think there are pros and cons to this setup, but it's bizarrely implemented. You can toggle some settings in the menus about what your default choice of aim is, but I don't know what difference it makes, because it always remembers your last choice. So what's the point of the default? The first time you equip a gun? and then after that it remembers your last choice? Why even give me the option? This is dumb. At least give me the option to style it like Future Soldier. The reason that system is better is, if you need to take an extra step to aim down your sight, that's fine because your enemy is probably further away, so you have reaction time. Now if you're trying to snap off a quick couple of rounds at a guy who's close by, but you immediately look down your optic instead of over the shoulder aim, that can be a real hassle because it narrows your field of view. The movement still feels sluggish and a little stiff. Getting up to a run from standing still feels weird, and your character doesn't seem like they move enough to convey the feeling of running. They just kind of glide. While the shooting looks and feels pretty solid, the same critique about the running holds true. Your character doesn't seem like they're reacting much to the recoil of the gun, but enemies look like they're taking serious damage when shots land, and the audiovisual feedback you get when you shoot is visceral. Weak death animations though. The cover system is also bizarre. I miss the control scheme from Future Soldier, but they probably thought that they could free up the A button if they moved sprint to the left stick click and turn cover into an automatic thing. Basically, if you walk close enough to a wall, your character automatically plants their back to it and slides side to side along it. This is fine, but a little sloppy, especially when you get to the corners and you want to lean around to see what's up or to take a shot. It's much snappier when cover is an affirmative controller input. That way you don't have to worry about your character departing the cover when you just want to peek out. One thing they added that I really liked is 2 primary weapons plus a pistol. This just makes a little bit more sense from an authenticity point of view, and also provides a little bit more flexibility for your team of operators who are in the middle of nowhere and might have to tackle a wide variety of scenarios without resupply. Also, they let you modify your guns on the fly with suppressors, fire mode selection, etc., similar to Rainbow Six, which is a big win. It seems they got rid of the prone rolls and the dive rolls, but when you're prone, you can look all around from the ground. I love that. What's about these one step forward, one step backward things, man? Some stuff about the weapons super bugs me. I'm obviously not as familiar with it, but I didn't like this implementation of Gunsmith nearly as much. In Future Soldier, they made some things options that shouldn't have been, partially to overinflate the importance and total number of weapon permutations. In Wildlands, they take it a step further because they have a 30-hour campaign and massive open world to stuff with collectibles. So even though no armed force in the world uses a 20-round G36 magazine, I'm not even sure HK produces one, you will use one in Bolivia until you can find the high-capacity rifle upgrade. Using 20-round magazines on rifles and ACOG sights on sniper rifles is hogwash, purely done to spite players. I mean, give them more things to find and unlock while UB advertises more and more weapon permutations. Just very cynical and disappointing. Speaking of things they make you unlock that Future Soldier didn't, in this game you only start with the ability to do 1 sync shot with your team. Excuse me? I have 3 teammates. Why do I need to unlock the ability to make them shoot people? I get it, they want to pad out the progression, but this sucks. Also, one time I tagged an enemy for a sync shot, but I decided not to spend my guy's shot on it because you have to wait for a cooldown. I figured I might need the sync shot in the near future, so I killed the enemy. You know what happened next? It told me I needed to cool down the sync shot anyway. Bad Ubisoft, bad design. Double tap Y to draw a pistol is great because you should always be able to draw your sidearm in a pinch, but it's exceedingly slow, so no points awarded. Another step forward, step back. Adding binoculars is cool. It lets you survey the land and mark targets with something besides your drone. They fleshed out team orders more, although the interface is gaudy and clumsy. Photo mode! Wildlands plays in 4K and HDR on Xbox, and oh man, do these screenshots look good. Now, the photo mode is one of the more limited ones I've seen, but it has the essentials. However, more than half of the filters didn't do anything. Do I need to unlock them? What the heck? Also, it literally notifies me every time I enter or exit photo mode. Who the heck thought this was a good idea? As is my experience with a lot of big open world games, I was overwhelmed by all the stuff they threw at me at the get-go. The UI is so overwhelming. 50 things happen when you beat a mission. People talk over each other a lot because their lines are all triggered at the same time. There are so many kinds of mission or task that you can do. The menus are all confusing, and there's a ton of different types of progression. It's a lot to take in when you get started. The progression mechanics and requirements are extensive. There's a lot of meat on the bones of this game. I can see why it would keep you busy for a while, although I could also see why it would get repetitive. It's really chased that icon style of open world gameplay, and as I explored the environment and bounced from objective marker to objective marker, I found myself wondering how much you would possibly be able to navigate this game or make progress without your HUD. So, naturally I said, okay, what if I did try this with no HUD? And it's a mixed bag. I tried tracking this food shipment to intercept it, and with no on-screen waypoint, all I can say is, good luck with that. And I turned off the weapon widget, and at first I thought I couldn't even tell what weapon was equipped or what fire mode it was on. But they auto-hide that stuff when you don't need it, and it flashes up when you do. The main drag with trying to play with no HUD really comes down to navigation. And to the game's credit, the customization options on the HUD are pretty extensive, unlike our dearly beloved Zeldas where it's all or nothing. And nothing is the correct answer. But unlike those games, Wildlands doesn't jump out to me as a game designed or intended to be played with no HUD. By the time I went to my first enemy outpost, I had already turned off most of the HUD, which left me in an awkward position because I wasn't sure how to clear an outpost. There was no indication I was finished, even after killing all the enemies, and I started thinking maybe I should have gotten more acquainted with the game before I turned off my HUD. As it turns out, you don't clear outposts. Eventually the enemies come back. What? You don't clear outposts? I thought this was a Ubisoft game. I'll say this about Wildlands. As much as I have gripes with the game, I found it absolutely fun to play. I really did. A lot of the games I played during this experiment were late in the evening where I would turn them off and go to bed when I started getting drowsy. Wildlands, meanwhile, was the kind of game that kept me awake way later than I meant to stay up because I was engrossed. I kept thinking about when I could jump back in the next day, and I played it one more time instead of starting my final game, which actually was the difference between finishing that game before the trial ended and not finishing it. So that's how sold I was on Wildlands. Sold enough that I dropped $8 on it for a used copy on eBay. And for a game whose main story takes 27 hours to beat, I'd say that's pretty good bang for your buck. Completionists will spend upwards of 80 hours on it. Game 7. Lil Gator Game. I first heard about Lil Gator Game from Rasputin, the prolific YouTuber. I immediately knew I wanted to play it, and then it started getting rave reviews from the Besties podcast as well. It seemed like a good game to round out my Game Pass trial, since I'd be able to beat it in a final few days, and it would be another one my daughter could watch if she was around. You play as, wait for it, this may surprise you, a little alligator. You and your sister used to have fun playing and going on adventures, but now she's home on break from college and too busy to play with you. Naturally, you and your friends organize the most ambitious game ever on the island with a ton of friends and people you don't even know. But the players need leadership. You have to go around and convince them all to join in and help you run the game to make it so irresistible that your sister can't help but join in. It is extremely cute. Cuter than I expected, which is saying a lot. It's been described as a short hike meets Breath of the Wild. Since I've now played a short hike, I can confirm. Description accurate. It wears its Zelda influence proudly on its sleeve, and in a super endearing way. You will tread a lot of familiar ground for Zelda-type games, but with a twist. Every enemy in the game is a cardboard cutout of a monster made by one of your friends. None of them can hurt you, and all of them are optional whether you smash them or just leave them be. You'll meet friends who join your quest, but you'll also meet friends who you need to do something for them before they'll join in. The lamp shading of game tropes is so adorable. The writing is stellar. It reads a lot like a short hike. The tone, the jokes, even the all lowercase text. The climbing mechanic is similar too. The art and music are also just heckin' cute like a short hike. It's all animals talking in a very silly, hip way with real-world tech like phones and refrigerators. I went looking to see if the creative team overlapped at all with a short hike, but I didn't see any obvious connections. I think they just really liked it and wanted to emulate it. Sending selfies to your sister is just so cute. His walking animation, the way he sways back and forth, so cute. His swim! One thing I either didn't know or didn't remember going in is that it's celebrated for its movement mechanics. You can run, climb, glide, shield surf, skip along the water, float up and down in the air with balloons, and much more. It's deceptively deep. If you practice, you can gallivant around the island with style. Of the chunk I've played, the mom and the ice cream guy were the only ones with capitalized names, so the grown-ups have capital names. At one point, the game devolves into a send-up of the Phoenix Wright games, and I was dead. They even emulate the music. I could not get over it. And on my last day, I did laundry until 10 p.m. and went to bed without playing, let alone beating the game. A silly end to a great experience/experiment. I did end up buying Lil Gator Game to finish after my trial ended, but I haven't finished it yet. I have been pretty busy and not gaming much, and I didn't want to beat it without my wife or kid there to watch, since I know that they'll enjoy it, at least for a little bit. But when I want to shoot narcos in the face, I can do that on my own time. Also, if you're wondering why I never returned to play Hi-Fi Rush, I decided I wasn't going to have 12 hours to play it by the time I was done with Solar Ash, so I took it off the queue knowing that I could probably finish 3 other games in that amount of time if I was diligent. There's also some other games I considered playing with the trial, but I ended up just buying for cheap instead. Games like Medal of Honor Airborne and Battlefield 4. So, final verdict? What was the best game I played? Did anything end up topping A Short Hike? Of the games I finished, I think it is pound for pound the best one. But Solar Ash has been living in my head rent-free for months now. The game catalog of Game Pass is constantly shifting, but it remains one of the best deals in gaming for most people. If you have Game Pass or want to try it, another game I would strongly recommend is Mirror's Edge, which is unbelievably gorgeous and full of originality and bold ideas. You can get my take on Mirror's Edge by clicking here. Until next time, keep it clean.